after a brief bit of technical issues, we're back with your regularly scheduled content. What's going on, people? It's myself and Chris. I'm going to try and keep it, turn up the modesty a little bit there as far as that goes, get back into the spirit of things that way. But, Chris, these lists that we're about to break down tonight are so ridiculously tremendous that, I need to preface with a little bit of levity here, which is that I was watching at work, I had a little bit of off time, and I was finishing up the second series. That was a continuation of the Transformers series that we reviewed over the summer, that being Transformers War for Cybertron Chapter 2, Earthrise. And Chris, do you remember what I said to you when they were planning the 3-season arc as to what was going to happen in the third seson? You remember that? Do you remember what I said?
Just the greatest climactic Transformers run we've ever gotten.
Chris,
I don't know. What'd you say? I forgot. I'm not gonna lie.
We got a glimpse of Dinobot in this finale. We're getting the motherfucking Maximals and Predacons next season. It's happening, people. It's happening. If you're not watching the Transformers War for Cybertron show on Netflix, what are you doing with your life? Go watch it. It's the best Transformers thing I think I've ever seen. And this is from somebody who has said that Beast Wars is the pinnacle of Transformers content.
Since you opened up with that, I will just say that I couldn't put it in my top 10 because I haven't gotten a chance to watch the second installment of the 3 parts that came out because I'm in the middle of just so many shows and movie catch up right now. But I really enjoyed my time with those first 6 episodes. As you guys know, if you listen to our podcast.
Those first 6 episodes were really, really something special. It's funny because I already thought Siege was incredible enough, but Earthrise was even better. And I'm honestly I can't wait for part 3 because, dude, they're going to take the awesomeness that was these first 2 seasons and then merge it with the Maximals and, I don't know if my brain can handle that. And, dude, I thought they were going to change up, the designs a bit. Dude, I swear to God, it was a spinning image of Dinobot just with, much better graphics. Spinning fucking image. I was like, oh my God. And of course, they're making Dinobot the first one that they bring back because he was the most beloved character on that original run. You guys probably weren't expecting a Transformers recap to open it up, but I feel like nothing says us better than that. So, Chris.
Real quick, I just want to turn our attention to the chat. We got Stranger Boy and Jay Manley hanging out. Jay was getting a little worried. Yeah, Jay, sometimes you just got to make sure the audio is pristine before you go live. We only want to bring you guys the highest quality show we can.
Plus, I'm pretty sure StreamYard is playing its little games with us again, so we just wanted to make sure that we could outwit them. So, fingers crossed.
Film Fanatic just chimed in. Queen's Gambit is the best TV show of 2020. Hey,
that
we'll see if
show
it's on our list.
may or may not pop up on this list.
Guys, let us know your list throughout the duration of this episode. Of course, we'll read them off on the episode. And without further ado, Dom.
Yeah, so, I wanted to preface with a little bit of levity, which is that yesterday was an exceedingly bad day for me. I went to a friend's house. He was throwing a housewarming party. Not a lot of people there. We were keeping it all very COVID safe, all that good stuff. And somebody accidentally took my jacket with my car keys in them. So I had to make a couple of long drives in order to get my spare key and then go back and get my car. I did not have a fun day yesterday, to say the least. But the one thing I will say is that the thing that got me through was the fact that we were getting to do this podcast today. Because, Chris, we know the top 10s have kind of and doing your end of the year best of lists have kind of become a staple of this kind of modern day movie critiquing community that we find ourselves in on YouTube now. But, oh man, I think I have a problem because I love doing these freaking lists. I really, really do. It's a lot of fun. I had so much fun doing the best movies turning 20, just kind of taking that little trip down memory lane before we dove into the nitty gritty as far as covering what we believe are the best media properties of 2020. We're doing TV shows this week. We're doing movies next week. Although at this point, if there's one thing that 2020 proved, both because of the coronavirus and everything else, it's that they have become completely interchangeable. Because I'm not going to lie, I think I enjoyed every single thing that I have on this list more than I did my favorite movies of this year. And that's not something that I don't think I can say about any other of the previous years. Even as good as Watchmen was last year, it still didn't top Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and just the experience that came from that, or Uncut Gems or any of the other incredible movies that we saw from last year. So I think that's whatever the case may be with how our lists go and how we end up ranking this stuff. I think that is the biggest takeaway.
Fair enough. Yeah. As far as comparing this year in TV to last year, it's a bit of an odd one to do just because of the nature of how we seemingly had 6 months where there was nothing coming out. The quarantine hit the world and everyone shut down. They wanted their ratings to be the best, so we didn't get much, and then it was really just like an insane dump of content in the back half of the year. So it's been a lot to process, and because of that, there's been a lot to watch, whereas it's more spread out and easier to watch. I'd say my watch experience was more enjoyable in 2019, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, just because of being just less inundated all at once. I'd say there was the same amount of content, but we just didn't have it all dumped on us at once like the last 6 months of the year of 2020. So I don't know. I think the quality is pretty much the same. The thing is, there's so many TV shows that come out each year. You just have to find the good ones.
Yeah.
And I think that we do a good job of that.
Yeah, it's the thing that I loved about doing the list last year and kind of, again, doing the continuation of this year is the fact that, like you said, movies are, for the most part, even as diverse as they get, are pretty homogenous, and it's pretty easy to catch up on them versus TV. There's so much. And the thing that I love so much about last year's lists is that they were both so different. Like, so different. Like, you and I think, had, like, 3 entries in common last year. And it could not have made me happier. And looking over your list that you have, and then looking it over and comparing it to mine, I'm like, oh, this is going to be another banger video. So,
yeah, so we got Brian Beebe saying yo, yo, yo in the chat. That being said, I think I knew where you're going with this. Dom, is it time to jump in?
I think it is. I really think it is. Like, I had like more of a jokey lead up to this, but like, I'm just so excited. And I just want to get into this. Like, this is Royal Rumble time, people. The top 10 best TV shows of 2020. And Chris, I believe I kicked us off last time, so you're going to kick us off this time. Your number 10 TV show of 2020.
This was a show that I've been watching as someone who's a gamer. Surprisingly enough, I have not played the original games because that style of game isn't really my thing. But I really do enjoy a good video game adaptation. So Castlevania is my number 10. The animation style harkens back to the animation of yesteryear in regards to its hand-drawn stills that they animate, and they actually draw each frame by hand. So it's kind of like my favorite animated film of all time, Akira. Of course, Akira came out in the 80s, so they kind of had no choice. But like for them to do it this way, it has that very rustic gothic feel in regards to they could have easily done so many modern animation techniques and implemented so many modern tools that we have, you know, all these different programs that just make life so easier for animators. So them choosing not to do that, you can kind of see the hand-drawn love in each still, which I think sort of is a backdrop to this really dark, not for kids, and it's actually not marketed for kids, just people assume it's for kids because, oh, it's based off a video game. Let's not forget it's a rated M video game. But, you know, that medium sometimes gets misconstrued by the average Joe, which is fine because I think that makes it better if you watch this thinking that it's going to be for kids, going in and then getting this intensely dark story about a vampire who feels isolated by the world and sort of retaliates because of his anger and because he, instead of choosing to assimilate and conform with the humans, rather wants to destroy them. But kind of like how BoJack takes these really dark and human turns and actually makes you think about adult sort of growth and interpersonal relationships. I never thought Castlevania would be the show to do that because the first season was very trope oriented, sort of setting it up. Like I said, true video game adaptation IP in the first season. But they really, once I think Netflix gave them legs, I believe that the next 2 seasons are already ordered because it's just become one of those Netflix cult hits. I think once these creators got sort of their confidence, is what I'll put it, and their job security, this thing has just sort of taken off. And there's not a lot of people who I know watch this. It's kind of one of those shows that I think survives just by the sheer factor of when it comes out, it's in the top 10 for like 3 days, and you know Netflix has so much subscription money that they can afford to just throw this one a bone every now and then. It's relatively cheap being animated, so there's not a lot of people I know who watch it, but everyone I know who does watch it highly reveres this show, and I think for good reason. So at number 10, Netflix's, although I hate to say it because really it's not Netflix's, it's actually Namco's, if you want to be specific as to who owns it. But Netflix is the one funding Castlevania, which is an awesome little animated show. 6-episode seasons, you can't beat Castlevania on Netflix. So yeah, that's my number 10.
Yeah, Netflix's anime game has kind of been like really low-key underrated.
It's actually not an anime.
It's not?
It's an American animation.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. Man, that just shows you how good American animation has got, that it can fool me into thinking that it's anime. Before I get into my number 10, I just wanted to give a shout out to Stranger Boy, who I believe is going to be touting down his list with us throughout the night, so that'll be actually be kind of cool. Is de facto a third top 10 list, which we're missing Pat. Well, we didn't have Pat on the TV shows last year. We had him only on the movies. But yeah, so Stranger Boys, number 10 is Defending Jacob, which I know is that miniseries that premiered on Apple TV with Chris Evans. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I heard good things about it from everyone that watched it. So now, my number 10. So real quick, I know that I kind of talked about this at first, but I really did want to preface it and say the Transformers, what's called War for Cybertron, I still don't even really know how to qualify it because the seasons are just so good and so tight and so compact that if not for the fact that we only got 2 of the seasons this year and we're getting the 3rd one, like I wouldn't even know how to kind of qualify it for the list because I'm like, oh, would I be doing Earthrise or would I be doing Siege or would I be doing like both of them combined? But I really wanted to shout out love because I didn't think that it was going to be possible for a Transformers property to top Transformers Prime for me, which still to me was kind of the height that Transformers cartoons could get. And then the show comes out and just blows it out of the water. And this past season, Earthrise just did things that was completely mind-blowing to me that I didn't expect. With that being said, my actual number 10 is Industry. I just had to do that lead up. So Industry, for all of those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, Industry is a show that was produced by Mickey Down and Conrad K, who were... Oh, sorry, pardon me. Who were guys who worked in the London banking industry, didn't quite make it, and then came out and wrote a show about it. The show was discovered by Lena Dunham and sold, and it was another co-production between BBC and HBO that came out this year. And I always have this fascinating thing every year where I've got specifically with HBO, because I've had a long relationship with HBO since high school, because they kind of, I feel like, help define my television tastes, which is that I always look forward to the returning seasons that I know are coming, but every once in a while, I always look at the trailers to see what they've got that's coming out new. And usually I see bits that are in the little trailer montages. But this show, I saw a solo trailer of. And I don't think I really started to pay attention to it. Like, it had a really cool, like, vibe to it. I saw it was a British show. I'm like, oh, cool. I haven't gotten into a British show in a while. And then I saw Ken Leung, your boy from Lost.
Yeah.
And I am not understating things at all when I say that this might be his best performance that he's ever given. This show, in layman's terms, is Melrose Place meets Wolf of Wall Street, where you've essentially got this group of post-grads who are fresh out of school, basically entering the cutthroat world of banking. But even though they're like first-year entries, the show does not hold back as far as showing, yes, this is the most difficult job, one of the most difficult, high-risk, high-reward, and just like toxic environments you will ever be in. But the chances that you have here are... will not be equaled by any other industry. And our entry character into the show is a young American girl named Harper, portrayed brilliantly by newcomer Myla Herrold. And the show kind of explores her relationships and her friendships and just that she forms with all of her different coworkers. There are a couple different characters that are introduced here, a couple of first-time actors who absolutely blew my socks off as far as that goes. It's not really a show that I was expecting to love as much as I did, but I think kind of the interest areas that this show goes to, it shows that kind of television can still thrive in, I guess, a traditional sense in 2020. Because, again, in a year where we've become, again, just kind of grasping on to any bit of content that we can get our hands on and just... trying to, and a lot of stuff is miniseries and everything is shortened, and we have no idea whether Netflix is going to cancel a show out of nowhere. I'm never going to forgive them for Glow still. I don't care.
That is ridiculous.
It's kind of nice to get like a show that like reminds you, oh no, you can like actually follow this long form story, and it can be high stakes and high tension filled every single episode, but it could also just like have cool moments where they're just chilling back and, being teens and having sex and doing drugs and a lot of other cool stuff that quite frankly hasn't been in the show recently. And again, there's a reason why it's number 10 on my list. It was not necessarily a show that made a tremendous, like, wow impact on me, but It was definitely enough to be like, yeah, no, this is one of those shows that it has a tremendous first season that I hope will get recognized by more people as it goes on. And I wanted to give a shout out to all of the brand new cast members. Like I said, there are a couple of old school cast members in here. Like I said, Ken Leung ends up portraying the main character, Harper's mentor. His name is Eric, and he is awesome on the show. But a couple of new actors, Bianca Burford, Derek Riddell, Ben Lloyd Hughes, Will Tudor, David Johnson, Harry Lottie. My personal favorite character on the show, that being, what is her name? Yasmin, portrayed by Marissa Abella. And, but it all revolves around Harper, and she is the MVP. She is the mainstay of this show, and I highly recommend anybody who has HBO Max to go and watch this show. It's really, really good. It did get renewed for a second season, so that's my number 10, Industry.
Nice, man. I'm definitely going to be checking that one out. I mean, Ken Leung, man, Miles is just a great addition to that show. Lost.
You're not going to recognize him. I'm just saying.
Cool. That's good. I love when actors show their depth. Perp Minded hanging in the chat. What is going on, man? He says Attack on Titan is the best show of 2020. Yeah, it is cheating. I haven't watched it yet. I know I've heard good things. I mean, I watched the first 2 episodes, but I like to wait for that binge when it comes to my anime, especially with shows that hype. Jay Caved and finally got Apple TV Plus. Let us know if you enjoyed. I have it. I like it so far. Haven't seen a Miss show yet. Only watched 3 shows on it though.
Yeah,
so.
I was about to say. I'm like, there haven't been that many big shows on there. I don't think so.
Industry was surprising. Perp saw Industry. Masked Singer is the greatest show in history. Okay, I like that. That's funny. Oh man, poor Masked Singer. It just makes me think less of our good old boys from Community. It really makes me think so less of Mikhail and especially I'm forgetting his name right now. Leslie Chow from The Hangover.
Oh my God, what's his name?
Not Ben Chang. That's terrible.
Ben Chang.
Remember, but it's just like, yeah, it just sucks that like that's kind of what they've succumbed to. I hope that they get out of the gutter in that regards. Yeah, and
that's so
Slow getting canceled was a huge L, guys.
Ken
if you're
Jeong.
listening,
Oh my God, Ken Jeong. Wow,
exactly.
How did we both brain fart there?
We got some Masked Singer defense in the chat. Jay says, "Don't mock the last singer." Okay, I can see that. You watch it with your kids. That makes sense.
Yeah, that
makes sense. All right, well, guys, listen. If you're on audio, you're missing out, man. The chat is going off tonight. Find us on YouTube.com/TalkinTV. And with that being said, let's jump into our number 9 picks.
Yes, number 9. Let's go.
Top 10 of 2020 for me is a little show on the CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Channel, that absolutely swept the world, really Canada first, and it became such a big hit in Canada that they actually finally sent it out elsewhere, and it's doing really well worldwide. I mean, some of these guys pretty much got their starts off this show. If you look at Paul Sung-yi, who's now has this reoccurring role, it seems, in The Mandalorian, which is awesome, as the X-Wing pilot. And then of course Simu Yu Lee, who is going on to be in, what's that Marvel one, The Legend of the Nine Tails,
Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings. He is Shang-Chi himself.
Exactly.
And I guarantee it's because Kevin Feige saw Schitt's Creek and he loved it. I mean, Kim's Convenience. That's the 6th time I do it. I'm going to do that every single time.
He did watch Kim's, just so you know. He said he enjoyed it. I saw an interview on this guy's Star Wars Theories channel. Anyways, Kim's Convenience, guys. It is an amazing sitcom. It's a refreshing take on the traditional sitcom format. Basically, what this show is it chronicles a family of immigrants from Korea. The parents are immigrants and their children are first generation. And of course, there's intermingling family drama, which all shows need. And it's just a really nice, refreshing take on the sitcom, sort of bringing in new perspective. They sort of interlope a lot of Korean culture into the story, which is actually really interesting because it further sort of shows how the Eastern family dynamic meets the Western family dynamic, and they sort of break that apart. And they really, what they do is, in an amazing way, they sort of deconstruct how seriously everyone takes everything nowadays. And it kind of makes you think like, oh, yeah, I mean, there's no reason to get that worked up about everything. Life's life, things happen. People are different. We need to accept that. And it's got a charm to it while also just being kind of laugh out loud funny. And I think that's at the heart of it. Appa, otherwise played by Paul Sung-yi, who is just so charismatic, so lovable in that role that you just can't stop watching. And it's crazy because I knew I couldn't rewatch this, even though I normally like to rewatch some of my top 10s before we do a list, because I wouldn't just be able to watch the 4th season. I'd have to watch it all. And I just did not have time for that because I wanted to just, get a few more shows in as we get later on, make the final cut. And so, this is an addictive show. I want everyone to watch it, at least watch the first episode, because I think you'll instantly be hooked, and it's only a quick 22-minute sit through, and you're gonna fly through it. So yeah, Kim's Convenience. It's more than a sitcom. It's a revolutionary show in regards to like how expertly it gives voices to just like so many different types of people, and it's just the show that we need. It's the show that like the world currently needs. So check it out. It's very charming.
You've told me about the show probably every time that we've hung out since I first got back from school, and for whatever reason, every time you mention the CBC, my mind immediately goes to Schitt's Creek, and I hope that one day I will stop making that mistake, especially because Schitt's Creek is still going. And remind me again, this was Kim's 5th season that just aired this year?
4th season.
4th season.
And they got renewed for 2 more in the final 6th season. So
yep. So it's really interesting. I mean, the Canadians in general just need more props because like they've also got like a kind of a low-key indie studio going that just produced 2 of the best films of this past year. So I definitely think they need more props just in general for their content. Shout out to our buddy Brandon, Brando critic. But like I said, just Schitt's Creek was a phenomenon, and it blew up to, I think, bigger than anybody was ever expecting. Perp minded, I can't get into today's sitcoms. I completely feel you. Every single time I see a trailer for a new NBC show. I can't even make it through the trailer. So
Per predicts Outer Banks is in our top 5. We'll find out.
Again, stick around to find out. And Stranger Boys number 9, The Astronauts. Stranger Boy, do us a favor. Let us know what that. Give us a quick blurb as what that show's about. I've never heard of it.
Me neither. Dom, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is a show that, again, I made a big deal of when it was, obviously, because it was filmed in our hometown, and it sucked because I feel like with the exception of Mark Ruffalo at last year's Emmys, no one's really been talking about this show, and I think that's a shame because I think that of all the incredible kind of elongated movies that we got as miniseries this year, this is still one of the best, and like I said, I mean, a lot of those were on my list last year. I've got, I think, even more this year. But no, my number 9 is I Know This Much Is True, which was the latest Derek Cianfrance project. Derek Cianfrance, famously of Blue Valentine and Place Beyond the Pines fame, shot his most recent project in our area. It's the adaptation of the Wally Lamb novel from '98 that stars Mark Ruffalo's twins, Dominic and Thomas Birdsey. Thomas, who is, of course, inflicted with a severe form of mental illness that Dominic views as a family curse. And throughout the show, we kind of learn the origin of both of those characters and their family lineage and legacy and how it's kind of come to affect them and their actions that they do in the present. And I really think it's a shame that a lot of people, that this show has kind of drifted from the public conscious, because I think this show still offers a lot to, still has a lot to offer, I should say, on its statements on mental health, kind of the idea of whether that, if that actually has a basis in family lineage or whether it is simply based on like kind of this karmic resolution. I think that ultimately this show kind of turned people off based on its pacing and how kind of sad-natured it was, but the acting was still incredible all around the board. I mean, the filmmaking Derek Cianfrance has a way of shooting that just makes things seem so in the moment while at the same time feeling so morose. Like, there was never a moment here where I was bored watching this. Obviously, again, the random scenes from my hometown that I recognized definitely popped up. I don't want to make this seem like what's it called? Like I'm just into this because it's shot in my hometown. I'm not, even though that is a big factor in it. But yeah, no, this is still one of the best shows of the year, I think. I think that kind of anybody who, for lack of a better word, for anybody who was kind of feeling 2020 a little bit too hard lately, I think this is the show for you, because it kind of shows that no matter how bad things get, there's always kind of a light on the other end of the tunnel, you know, no matter how many kind of shitty people you have to deal with in your life. So that's my number 9. I know this much is true.
Yeah, I wanted to add that, being it shot in our hometown, but you know, it's just kind of tough to do when I didn't really resonate with anything too deep that kind of sat with me the whole time. But it was still a well-made show. It's in my honorable mentions, spoiler alert, but it didn't crack the top 10, but you have great reasons for putting it in there. Especially we had literally someone on our podcast interview him about what it was like
my buddy Brandon, who worked on the show, which was awesome. And again, to me, it's Ruffalo's best performance, which is insane because he's given so many incredible performances throughout the years that he just hasn't been recognized for because people really didn't know who he was until the Hulk. So
yeah, exactly. And Perp says he wonders if To the Lake made one of our lists. We'll see.
I've never heard of that show. So
Astronauts is the Nickelodeon show. Okay, that
makes sense why I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, little out of our wheelhouse from modern.
Yeah, I was about to say, watch our interview with the on the Orange Years. That was more closer to our time, I should say.
In top 5, yeah, we'll see, Jay. We'll see. So moving in.
The movie or the show? The Boy.
I don't know.
Because there's a movie called The Boy. So, Jay, please clarify if it is different.
Yeah, clarify. Yeah. Cool. So, moving into our number 8s, yeah?
Yes.
Sweet. So, with that being said, for me, my number 8 is a show that everyone watched, and I think had a much more positive reception in its second season by the haters. I think it was obviously widely loved in the first season, but I didn't really give it too much of a, I actually think I was one of the only few to give it a fair shake in the first season. Let me rephrase that. I didn't simply, just fall for it because it was, hey, more Star Wars. And we finally have something that isn't these terrible movies. There were still issues with the first season, but they fixed a lot of that in the second season. At number 8, I have The Mandalorian. This show really kind of found itself this season. And like I said, ad nauseum, only a few weeks ago now, we wrapped up our Mando recap series week to week. I hope that it wasn't just a conduit, a jumping off point for all these other spinoffs. I hope that we can continue to get compelling narratives from Mando like we did this season, like we didn't get the first season. Because to spend all this time with this character now and to have that go to waste is going to be very frustrating, to say the least. But we're not talking about the future. We're talking about this second season, and I actually thought they really stepped it up. The filmmaking was awesome. The character moments were stronger. They were felt more thought out. The stakes actually were there. It wasn't just, okay, well, hey, we have to get from point A to point B, and they're going to drink whatever we give them anyways, so we might as well just, go buy the cheap stuff and, get the knockoff Coca-Colas instead of buying them Pepsi and Coke, because we can save money and they're still going to, buy it from us. So it actually felt thought out, and I appreciated that. So gave me a lot of hope for the future of Star Wars, actually. So couldn't be any higher because there's still a lot of problems, but it actually still beat out a few shows this year, which is crazy because I thought that this was no slouch for television. It certainly was an interesting year, like we said at the top, but there was good TV. So for Mandalorian to be at number 8 kind of says something for me. So yeah, Mandalorian came in at number 8.
Yeah, you famously gave me you famously gave me shit for putting it in my top 10 at my number 10 last year. And I'm like, I still love the first season even with those problematic few episodes, but it's funny because obviously, once the lockdown set in, we weren't sure whether we were going to, get any of our returning TV shows of last year. So many shows delayed, Barry, Succession, Glow, obviously famously being canceled, Mindhunter, among many, many others that were either canceled or delayed as a result of the lockdown. At the very least, we know we're getting Succession and Barry, hopefully, if not this year, then next year. But it's funny because The Mandalorian and One Other Choice were kind of the two shows that kind of, I would say, saved the back half of 2020 as far as TV goes. Like, that has kind of got things spurred, because people weren't sure whether they were coming back, but they managed to successfully come back. And my number 8, I feel like, is the other of those big sophomore seasons for kind of shows that had their big debut. My number 8 is The Boys, which, congratulations, you made it up one spot higher than this past season. Look, I still love the show. I love the absolutely dark kind of subject matter take that Seth Rogen and obviously the showrunner, Eric Kripke, have taken. When it comes to when it comes to kind of the portrayal of these characters and just kind of the mass differentiation that it has from the comics, and kind of, again, getting back to showing what superheroes would be like if they lived in the real world, while also just having as much fun with it as possible. And I famously said that this season was better than the first season, and looking back, I wasn't quite sure of it because I still also, similar to kind of what your problems with The Mandalorian, I still had a lot of problems with that first season of The Boys, and subsequently, I had a lot of problems with this season as well, but they were mostly, I think the difference being is that I'm realizing now that they're mostly stylistic and they're not necessarily having to do with the stories that they're telling, because the stories are really good. I think this season was a lot more focused, obviously. I think the stakes were elevated a little bit. I think that the character work on some of the characters that I had problems with done much, much better. The characters that were already great just got fucking, like, even higher. Like, I didn't think it was going to be possible for them to get even like crazier with Homelander, and yet they did. And then with how they brought in the Stormfront character and having them bounce off each other, everything they did with Butcher. It's so funny because I was sizing up to really, really get ready to hate Butcher this season, and they completely pulled a 180 on me. This season was subversive in all the best ways. Again, they just upped the ridiculousness and the humor and the fucking gross out gags to 11. The fucking the how they brought the Girls Get It Done back around was absolutely incredible. And yeah, this show is everything so far that it's pointing out to be. Again, it's still, I think the difference between last year and this year. Last year, it was a combination of, I thought there were a lot of other shows that I enjoyed and thought were better. And also, I thought it was a good debut. I didn't think it was this incredible knockout debut that everyone thought it was. This season was a legitimately great season, but everything else on my list is legitimately incredible. Like I said it beforehand, this is going to be one of the most difficult lists and top 10s that I've ever made it through. But The Boys, it's still kicking ass. It's still giving no fucks the way that Butcher always likes it. And it was a lot of fun. And I wish I could put it higher, but sadly, still had that ending, which again, it's funny because ironically enough, this and The Mandalorian both have the same problem, which is that their ending kind of left me a little bit worrisome for the future, but this much more so because that post-credit scene, yikes.
Yeah, so with that being said, jumping into my number 7 show.
Yeah, you don't have that much different to say.
The Boys. I never had issues with the first season. I actually had some issues with this season in regards to like the slightest direction change. I've kind of come to realize what I had first thought was a step back was merely just a creative choice that maybe didn't quite resonate with me, but was done in a sort of really gripping way to so many people. So I couldn't deny that. And the one thing I can't deny is the growth in this very large ensemble cast already. So even if there were some things, sort of giving Butcher's wife more of a role and having that get a little messy at times in regards to like, is she on surveillance? But he's there somehow, and then Homelander just keeps just by fate not seeing Billy Butcher. Just it's like Homelander can't find him. Okay, but like you got to forgive that stuff because the overall experience of the season was bigger, better, and more badass than last season. And if it's like an action series show about superheroes, like let's have some fun sometimes, and that's what I did with the show. I had a lot of fun with it. It continues to just do crazy things and deconstruct the superhero genre, which I was never super Marvel fanboy, but I have to think it kind of like woke some people up and made them realize like, hey, we're getting a formula over and over again. Like, why superheroes can be insane and crazy. Look at this show. And I respect them for that as well. So not the most perfect show, definitely on the bottom half of the list, but still top 10 material because it's a really fun ride, and I can't wait for season 3, man. It's gonna be freaking awesome.
Yeah, did you see that they announced today that the Hero-gasm arc is gonna be in season 3?
No, but that's really cool.
Yeah, I like I said, I didn't read the comics, so I have no idea what that is, but I'm assuming you would. But look, all I'm gonna say, my last thing that
I forgot. So I mean, I read the comic last summer when it first aired.
Oh, okay.
And have brain dumped it since, but I remember it being an awesome comic. Billy Butcher is not the same Billy Butcher on screen.
Told you.
Neither is
I told you. The only thing the last thing I'm gonna say about the boys is that there is an actual superhuman in this show that's name is Love Sausage. And for you to want to know what that is about, just go watch it because it's incredible. We got that as a moment of television in 2020. If that doesn't tell you,
and just so you know, the fact that a show can have things that asinine in it, but take itself so seriously where you can't deny the quality of filmmaking, that right there is a reason why it's in my top 10. So,
man.
With that being said, Dom, jumping into your number 7 pick.
All right. That's what this show is doing now. Okay, no, yeah. My number 7 is, again, a show that you just talked about. It's funny. We're playing a fun game of like almost like hot potato as far as passing back topics that we're talking about, which is my number 7 is The Mandalorian. And at the risk of sounding kind of too repetitive as far as what you were saying, look, I definitely didn't kind of, I enjoyed the first season. I didn't think it was amazing, but I thought it was definitely a step in the right direction, and it was just a nice palate cleanse after those god-awful movies that we had to sit through. And this season, at first, it was kind of a little bit of a rinse and repeat. I'm like, okay, are we actually doing something? But to me, this season steps it up as far as this season really settles into what it is that it's going for. It settles into its story. It settles into its brisk pace. The action is upped. The special effects are arguably even better. The connections to the overall Star Wars universe, again, well, that kind of turned off a couple people that we knew of, and for me, I absolutely loved every single minute of it. This was kind of a return to the Star Wars that I knew growing up, and I add a little bit of a caveat to that because I'll cover that obviously in a later entry on this list, which is that kind of what Dave Filoni has done in the last couple of years of Star Wars prior to the Disney animated films was so underrated and so undervalued as far as part of the overall Star Wars canon. But this show has kind of allowed that era of Star Wars canon, which to me still has some of the best Star Wars stories ever, to kind of take on a larger form. And again, just the fact that this looks better than most of the movies that we have now with special effects. Like, this movie kicks Wonder Woman 84's ass as far as special effects goes, and they shoot the whole thing in downtown, in a studio in California. Like, none of those scenes are exterior. It is all like, that is how good these special effects are and this action is. And yeah, I'm going to say, we got Luke Skywalker back in a Star Wars show to just show up and mow through an entire room of droids. Because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what we want to see Jedis do. We want to see Jedi mow through shit with lightsabers. And that's exactly what we got. And also just as far as the emotional kind of wrap up to kind of Mando and the child's arc, and we finally got the child's name. It's, again, wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, but this season was full of so many surprises that just took my enjoyment of the first season as far as being like, okay, this is kind of cool, this is kind of kitschy, okay, Star Wars can still be good, and being like, whoa, no, Star Wars could still be great. The music was great, the performances, I'd say, were even better, the direction got even more insane, with the exception of that Spider episode, but Peyton Reed redeemed himself with the finale. We did a week-by-week recap of it. I basically said everything that I can about the show on that recap, so go watch that, and yeah, I'm very happy to finally have it higher, but also have it like kind of justified, not just be like, hey, because it's Disney Plus. So my number 7, The Mandalorian. Season 2.
Yeah, man, I'm going to turn to the chat before we jump into our number 6 picks. Jay says he knows we had issues with it, but he enjoyed Lovecraft Country. Super strong start. I just don't think they finished through.
Agreed. I love the pilot of that show. It's an incredible pilot. I can't say the same about the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's like if you want to win, in baseball, you got to win 4 out of those 7 games, and they only won like 2. So but they still made it, I guess, to the championship, although not in my mind, but to a lot of people seem to really like it. Perp Minded said Lovecraft Country as his favorite of 2020. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it got too silly, but hey, we're not here to talk about Lovecraft Country. You guys can go and check out our recap series on that if you want. I didn't hate my time with it, but it certainly lost steam.
Silly,
amazing pilot, but
silly is not the word I would use. I would use something that rhymes with steaming. But it's
after the pilot for some reason.
After
it
the
just
pilot,
lost its
I'll
gusto
give it
to
the
me.
second episode. The second episode I kind of enjoyed, and then once we got to the third episode and onward,
Indiana Jones is where I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, that was where I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah. So glad. Yeah. Hey, we're glad you made it too, man.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for hanging, dude. The Crown and Dark were his favorites of this year. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, Elliot. That was a big recommendation from Elliot's end. But yeah, Chris, your number 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with The Haunting of Bly Manor. This show really took me by surprise, man. We kind of chose to watch it on a whim to cover it around our Shocktober Halloween event, the first annual, and it was really just not. I thought I was gonna go in to be terrified and super scared, and sure there were some tense moments. But what I really got was this amazing gothic romance that kind of just swept me off my feet in regards to, first of all, I wasn't expecting it. So it was definitely a bit of a shock. I thought I was going to be, I just bought my new 4K TV. I sat down to watch it for the first time. This is the first thing I watched. I was like, cool, I'm going to get terrified. It's October. Let's go. Got a hot cup of cocoa. And I'm just feeling terrible for this character who just can't get anything going right for her, and she just is this really nice person who just can't catch a fair shake, and not really anything scary about it, but it was well done. I thought the set design was awesome. I thought they really captured that gothic feel. I thought the writing was solid, even though a bit misleading. Again, wasn't that scary. It had the undertone of a ghost story, which I guess justifies it falling in the horror genre. But really what this is I'd say a traditional gothic horror with a twist, or a gothic romance with a twist. Sort of like those classic novels that they'd make you read in school that you thought were boring when you were younger, but now that you're older, you can appreciate that type of thing. And that's kind of what I got from this. And I thought the performances were awesome. I really liked the cast, a lot of people that I personally have not seen too often. So for them to really sell me on this show, which again, there is a very insane sort of ghost backdrop, Lady of the Lake type thing going on, but not have the romance get stepped on by that, was pretty awesome. Because again, went into this thing just looking for cool things to cover around Halloween and kind of got way more out of it than I thought I would. So it's a bit misleading. It's nothing like Hill House, but if you guys want something that can get you a little spooky, make you feel like a spider's walking up your back a little bit, like a little chill, but not scare you to death, this is for you. It's oddly enough, I'd say it's a good horror family watch. Or if you're hanging out with a special someone, you put this on. So it's interesting what they were able to do with the horror genre. So I do appreciate it for many aspects. So yeah, number 6, Haunting of Bly Manor.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed Bly Manor. In fact, it was in my top 10 for a while until I watched a lot of these other shows. And just to make sure that, just to keep everything in fairness, I went back and binged all of Hill House after it was done. And surprisingly enough, and this is going to sound crazy because everyone said that Hill House was better, Hill House just didn't have the same effect on me that this did. I think it's partially because I kind of was rushing through it, I will say, so I probably didn't get the intended effect, but I just thought there were a lot of... Hill House kind of had a lot of gimmicks that I just wasn't a big fan of. I wasn't the biggest fan of its portrayal of drug addiction and the idea that the house itself was supposed to be it was at once this really threatening kind of entity, and then no, it's just kind of the source of all of their family's mental health issues and anguish. I just that kind of really didn't translate that well to me, but Bly Manor was actually kind of really surprising as far as how it went, with kind of just being a show kind of about tragedy and just about a bunch of people who kind of just all ended up at this place that they kind of couldn't control and ended up kind of all getting something better out of it, even though they didn't think that they would. And so I was really invested in that, and I really do think the ending was actually legitimately heartbreaking as far as how that went. And I love Victoria Pedretti in that. She was a revelation. But
real quick, before we jump into yours, the chat's kind of going crazy about this Bly Manor pick.
Nuts.
Perp is not stoked on it. Sorry, man. Got to be honest, though. And Dia seems to like it. We triggered Perp. I'm sorry about that, man.
Yeah, I love sparking controversy as far as that goes. But I'm going to be the only person online. I don't care. I'll say this. Bly Manor, better than Hill House.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll be that guy. I'll be that guy. I'll
take.
take that shot. I don't care. Yeah, my number 6. People are gonna probably go insane that this is this low. My number 6 is The Queen's Gambit. Don't get me wrong. It took me a while to get to the show because I'm like, yeah, I'm not watching a fucking show about chess. And then I actually watch it. I'm like, okay, I'm an idiot. This show's incredible. And I think the only reason why I could justify putting it at number 6 is just my top 5. Where just I'm like, oh my god, just like everything was like hit after hit after hit after hit. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But with that being said, Anya Taylor-Joy continues her absolute winning streak. Like, I don't think the girl has had a miss as far as just her very, very short career has been, with just the kind of the masters of her craft that she's worked with, obviously with working with Robert Eggers and Corey Finley and just the other just massive amounts of talent that she has. And she continues that with going to work for Scott Frank, who moved over to Netflix a couple of years ago after a very, very long career in Hollywood. Again, wrote some absolutely incredible films, including Out of Sight, and has a co-writing credit on Logan. And he made this Western series a couple of years ago for Netflix called Godless that did very, very well critic-wise. And he opens it up, and only in 2020, during the middle of a pandemic, could he make a fucking show about chess, the number 1 show on Netflix. Because goddamn, if this show wasn't compelling. Because, again, I'll refer you guys back to the points that I made on the actual podcast that we did on this. But this, as far as kind of translating kind of the addiction aspect of sportsmanship into something like chess, which is the last place that you would expect for that to come in, and have that be like a really, really great kind of exoneration of kind of the anguish that this girl has gone through subliminally throughout her life. I think it's a really, really fascinating and surprisingly relatable struggle that it still kind of baffles me it hasn't been done to this point. And I mean, it's, again, everyone has watched this. It's the number 1 rated thing on Netflix, and it's just absolutely impeccable. Kind of, this is like, I think, the biggest thing from 2020 that like had the most, the largest effect on the world. Again, I love the cast. Just the story itself was just such a well done story, as told from beginning to end, just like with her Inception. It's the thing that, again, I love that these miniseries are doing, which is that they're taking these ideas that would have to be made into like 2 or 3 movies and putting them all into like these 7-8 episode runs, and they can just hit everything out of the park. The set design is absolutely gorgeous. I love the period piece stylisms around it. The chess games themselves are freaking riveting. All the performances around her are absolutely incredible. Again, Marielle Heller, Thomas Brody Sangster, Harry Melling, and all the other incredible actors that are in this. I particularly like when we kind of have the episodes where it's just her, because Anya is such an expressive actress. She says so much with just her eyes alone, and as far as kind of the deep tragedy that she's feeling, but she never does it in a way that kind of feels sappy or like kind of emo, I guess, for lack of a better word. So The Queen's Gambit is an absolutely riveting show. I can't believe it took me as long as it did to finish it. I finished it just in time for our podcast. I loved every single minute of it. I wish I could justify putting it higher. I think we're going to see it down the road a little bit on your list, Chris. But for right now, it rests at my number 6, The Queen's Gambit.
Maybe. I was very hesitant about watching a show about chess, so we'll see if it ends up landing in there. My number 5 show is Ricky Gervais's most recent cult smash called Afterlife. It's a Netflix original, and this show is a little bit of everything, man. At its core, it's a dark comedy, sort of about finding the humor in everything, which I think Ricky Gervais almost does to a fault with what this show's about, but that's the joke, and that's just who he is. And once you kind of get to know him and like listening to podcasts, getting into who Ricky Gervais is, sort of because I started to really like this show and you know, got into a little bit of the Office UK this year as well, sort of getting to know who he is. He's the only person that could do this. The show is about someone who loses the love of his life to cancer. They unfortunately didn't have much time together, but they made the most of it for sure, and he never quite recovers, and he just puts himself through hell because he can't forgive himself for something he didn't do. And so it's really interesting how it's marketed as a comedy, because there is a lot of humor in this, but really it kind of comes out of the disparity of the character. And I know it doesn't sound appealing, but this show is so damn charming. I don't understand, actually, and I still don't understand how something this dark and this, I would say, even sick to even think of, could be as charming and captivate literally everyone I know who has watched this show. Loves this show. And it's masterful. It's the writing is the reason why. I do know why, but I'm saying I don't know why because it shouldn't work. It shouldn't humanly be possible because of our emotions and because of how we feel things. But Ricky Gervais is just so good at observing the human condition and exposing it in so many different angles. And this is just another way that he kind of shows his mastery of people and his mastery of sort of self understanding and sort of seeing what's inside of himself that we all have. And this is just a wild ride. You guys gotta experience this because you can watch it if you're happy or sad too. Like you might think, okay, I'm gonna wait for like a day where something doesn't go right and put this on and really sulk in it. No, there's a lot of positive moments in this, and I know it wouldn't seem that way, but there really are. It's a masterclass in sort of taking a medium that's been around forever, comedy, dramedy, dark satire, and bringing it to a new height. Unfortunately, because of Netflix and their BS algorithms, of course, doesn't have enough eyes on it. But you could tell that's not why Ricky's doing this. This is his child. You hear him talk about it in interviews. He doesn't care if 5 people watch this. He made it for himself. So the fact that people watch it is good enough for him. And to me, those are some of my favorite projects because the passion is so apparent. Where even if you don't like the show, the experience of it, by the end of it, you'll be like, I'm actually really glad I watched that though, because that is human expression and it further exemplifies what the show's all about. So watch this show. It makes me feel like I'm in a freaking psychology class and I never wanted to think that hard about it, but these are just the questions that it begs while still being very delightful and enjoyable. So Afterlife by Ricky Gervais, man, it is one of the craziest shows I've seen in a long time.
I mean, you've been ranting and raving about this show again, like for a little bit now. So the only thing that I'm going to ask is, as a continuation of the joke that he made a year ago at the 2020 Golden Globes, I'm assuming his main character still hasn't killed himself, considering the fact that the show is on its 3rd season now.
It's about to be on its 3rd season. See, that his frustration with the world and the way that we interact with each other online is so apparent in this show. It's so many layers. There's so many layers, and I think he really gets the short end of the stick sometimes because he's a little brash at his public appearances, but he's got a heart, and it's in this show. So,
yep, so the character still hasn't killed himself. Okay, good to know. So,
well, if he did, the show's over.
That's what I'm saying. No, but that was the joke is that he made. He's like, yeah, Afterlife just got renewed for season 2. So spoilers, he didn't kill himself. Which that
well,
was
he's never going to.
I know. But still, so all right, now we're into the top 5, and oh my god, like this list was already difficult enough to make for me. Like just. I truly do think that every single one of these shows is better than any of the movies that I saw this year, which I don't, again, like, it's ridiculous. Okay. And my top 5, oh man, like I'm gonna have to like contain myself for like how much I want to rant and rave because most of these shows I have actually never talked about on this show before, and I find that to be a crime against humanity. Thank God I was able to catch up on them. In the last couple of weeks alone. My number 5, though, was not one of those shows. My number 5 was one of the first things and one of the only things that I saw pre-COVID this year, and that is Star Wars The Clone Wars. The final season was finally released on Disney Plus this year. After years of waiting for a show that I didn't even think I was going to get, I finally got Chris on board right when he was just on his way out the door with Star Wars and being like, fuck Star Wars, I'm done with this shit. I didn't like The Mandalorian, I didn't like Rise of Skywalker, and I'm like, I've been telling you I'm like, Chris, just trust me on this. And you did, and you watched this season. And I'm still waiting for you to watch the rest of it because I still don't think the effect of this final season works without the first 6 seasons. But still, like, this season was just absolute masterclass. The fact that Filoni got to put this out right after the smash hit success that was The Clone Wars, just wrapping up and tying together the beautiful knots that he took with these characters that we were already familiar with, and he just took them and transformed them in such a way, in an kind of a rough animated format that still to me is one of Cartoon Network's best shows they've ever done, and then for the show to unfortunately get the fate that it did. And the crazy thing about this season, I'm gushing a little bit about the whole show for a second there, but the crazy thing about this season is that the show already had a perfect finale. It had the perfect finale with how the 5th season ended. Like, you could ideally watch the first 5 seasons of that show and get the full, complete Clone Wars experience. And then when the 6th season comes out, the 6th season is really good, but it still adds, like, it's like an extra bonus material. It still doesn't feel like a complete, but this season makes everything feel like such a well-rounded experience. It brings back everything that kind of I loved about Star Wars growing up, because again, this to me is the Star Wars that I grew up with because I didn't get a chance to watch any of the prequels in the theaters. The animation was just stepped up to whole new levels. The stakes were so much higher. What they did with the finale, again, I will never stop kind of gaining, kind of bragging about how much I called it. This was, that I called how good of a finale this was going to be, and it delivered in every single way. Just tying in everything I feel like that Star Wars has been doing right for the last 10 years, difficult, few and far between as that is. It's just like, don't get me wrong, I love what Filoni has done on The Mandalorian, but this to me will always be his best thing. And just, I already gush about it enough. because it's already perfect. But yeah, that finale, it's taken a lot for me to just feel things in general this year, and that finale brought me very, very close to tears. It was such a great harkening back to the Star Wars that I loved growing up, and yeah, I'm done. Clone Wars, number 5.
Cool. Yeah, fair enough, man. Well said. So now I'm going to jump into the top 4. We're almost there. We'll have to find a spot for honorable mentions soon.
Yeah, no, we'll do that.
Let's do them after this. We'll do them before we hit the top 3.
Let's do them before number 1. Let's use it to what's it called? To spike us in a little suspense before number 1. Yeah,
I'm cool with that. That sounds good to me. So moving on to number 4, guys. For me, it was Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I completely disagree with what you said about needing to see the whole show, because I think a good season of, episodic arcs that don't fit into an overall narrative can speak for themselves, and they clearly did in this season. I actually have seen 3.5 seasons now, and nothing's come close to the magic of this final season, just because of how amazing it is. I'm never one of those guys who needs the prequels to be justified. I actually think those are fine films, not perfect, but I don't think they deserve the amount of hate that they get. I think that's just they're one of the first negative byproducts of the internet, in my opinion. But if you needed a little justification to kind of get behind those prequels, then this is it. This really comes in and sort of reads between the lines of what you hoped George Lucas was thinking and you hoped he was trying to say. And it does it in the most magical Star Wars way. It makes you feel like a kid again. And it's not just because it's a kid's show. It's because it's so well written, and this is predominantly a more fantastical child's medium to begin with. I think that's why we all watch sort of things like this that harken back to our younger years, to feel that youth in us again, that, we're all still young, but we're nowhere near high school, middle school age anymore. So I think it's a nice little callback when a show can kind of make you forget about time and reality and suck you in. Even though there was an arc in here, the Ahsoka arc, which I didn't think was the strongest, where we first meet her, not the final arc. Those last 4 episodes are probably the greatest Star Wars that I might ever see. And I stand by that. I said it on our podcast, and I'll say it again right now.
Honestly, but here's the thing. I'm tending to agree with you. I really am. Like, that's those. Yeah. I'm sorry, but those last 4 episodes, like, I didn't think it was going to be possible for a finale. Forget animated live action to come close to Avatar, which still to me is the magnum opus. But like these came damn close, like really damn close.
And they did what, in 22-minute episodes, roughly, what these past, 9 hours of Star Wars movies haven't even been able to come close to achieving. And it just shows, like, it's not about how much money or how many big names or, the rollout and how much highest gross. It's not about any of that. It's just about writing. And I feel like this year we actually kind of got back to good writing, which is awesome, because that's kind of the reason I put all of my films and shows in here. Which last year, I think, while we did have another tremendous year in television, I think some of it was based on shticks or sort of settings or universes, whereas this year it's all the writing that was made it so hard to rank this list. And Clone Wars, guys, get your head out of it. It's just a kid show. If you like Star Wars, this is the best Star Wars happened in the Clone Wars. I've said it once. I'll say it again. I wish I could have put it higher, but we're going to get into the top 3. Yeah. But I really struggled with my top 4 because of how good the show was.
Dude, I'm telling you, like, I struggle with this top 5. I struggle with this whole list. My number 4.
Hold on, real quick. Yes. Diaz, the Maul escape on the ship, legit insane.
Yes, it was. So, and this was already following, that was already following a lightsaber fight that made my top 10 lightsaber fights.
Right.
Like, I saw that fight like 3 months before I made that list. I'm done. I'm gonna fucking like nerdgasm all over the place if I keep going. But yeah, my number 4 is Better Call Saul, season 5, which again is a show that I feel like a lot of people forgot came out this year. But Better Call Saul is a really interesting case because it's been that show that is kind of creeping up throughout the popular sphere right up until it's about to hit its final season. And weirdly enough, even though it's still, I don't think a same type of a show as Breaking Bad, it's kind of getting the same exact treatment as Breaking Bad as far as the perception of it, where I think that when this last season comes out, whenever it comes out, it will truly be like revered, because the interesting thing to me about Breaking Bad that I noticed is that to me, Breaking Bad, while it was always a great show, never really became like the gigantic phenomenon it did until its last season when it had the Netflix help, because the first 5 seasons were put on Netflix and then you had the last season. But the reason to me why, and I'll admit this is kind of a caveat and holding it over for the whole show because I just finished watching the whole show for the first time this year. I started this show several years ago, shortly after I finished Breaking Bad, and I watched the first season, and it was good, but I'm like, okay, why am I gonna bother with this? I'm like, I love Saul. He's a funny supporting character in Breaking Bad, and Bob Odenkirk acts the hell out of him. But I don't need to watch a whole show about him. I thought it was cool that they were kind of doing the double Saul and Mike origin story, but I'm like, okay, I don't need to watch this. And then I got into season 2 and 3 and 4, and it kept getting up and up and up there. And they really started to break down the psychology of this character in a way that I didn't think was going to be possible to get as deep as they did, nor as interesting as they do, because Vince Gilligan continues to do what he made so good in Breaking Bad, which is just taking these kind of little insecurities that we have, despite the fact that he primarily focuses on middle-aged men that kind of everyone has in their lives, and really, really, really diving into the root cause of that, so much so to the point where he creates these stories that even though they're not necessarily kind of foreign to us, they're still like, we just can't take our eyes away. Because to me, the power of Breaking Bad, as many crazy drug-related things happen on that show, the power of that show was always Walter White is insecure about his position in his life because of his midlife crisis, and everything he is doing on the show is a result of that. And Saul, or in this case, as he's known in the show, Jimmy McGill, which is his original name, is kind of the same thing, where the trajectory of his character arc on the show is he is entirely driven by, can he actually be a good person, or or is he doomed to become Saul Goodman? And despite the fact that, you kind of know where the show is going as far as that goes, the show does a really, really interesting job of always kind of bouncing back and forth. And just if I could talk specifically about this 5th season in particular that aired this year, started in February, the thing to me that really set this, as far as okay, this is one of the best seasons of television I've ever seen, is besides the fact that it is drawing ever closer to Breaking Bad, and Jimmy has fully taken on the Saul Goodman persona at this point and is fully just investing in the shady tactics and dealings, but it still never loses sight of what made it so good in the first place, which is that kind of the insecurity of whether he will ever be kind of taken seriously by society versus saying just fuck it and going all in with kind of this rough and tumble criminal life, and how that affects all the people around him, both the familiar Breaking Bad characters and the new characters that were introduced in the show. The show is, once again, an absolute masterclass in everything that Vince Gilligan made great about Breaking Bad. I love every single one of these new characters and kind of the arcs that they've taken on. They bring in a really, really wickedly cool antagonist kind of out of nowhere, because it's funny because for the most part, the show relies on Breaking Bad antagonists you've seen before, because the primary antagonists of the show are the Salamanca cartel, but they bring in this new Salamanca in this past season that we've never seen before, and he's the best one. Tony Dalton knocks it out of the park. Better Call Saul is absolutely incredible, and I never in a million years thought that I would hear myself say this, but it is getting to the point where it is surpassing Breaking Bad. I don't think anything will ever be able to pass Breaking Bad as far as the kind of the zeitgeist moment, but as far as just overall quality, incredible writing, incredible tension, just absolutely incredible character arcs. Better Call Saul, I truly think, is one of the best shows that I would not at all see coming, especially considering it's a prequel, but not even really. It's just evolved to have its own persona at this point. It's incredible, and it's if I'm talking this much praise about Better Call Saul, you guys can imagine what I have for my top 3. So yeah.
I'll say it's reminiscent of the Frasier and Cheers thing.
Yes,
whereas,
absolutely.
Frasier clearly was a smash hit, but it never hit the zeitgeist appeal that Cheers had. But the thing is, it is more regarded by old school TV heads, and it makes sense because, when you do sort of what Friends didn't do with Joey, when you do that right, you're really just sort of continuing to work that muscle, and the more you work out, even as time goes on, you can slowly, even bodybuilders, they keep improving and they can keep lifting more and more and more. And it just kind of seems that's what's happening there with Vince Gilligan being so attuned to this world. It's probably second nature at this point. He probably has a hard time disseminating reality from the Breaking Bad universe, which I wouldn't blame him for. You know?
Kidding me? The Breaking Bad universe is his reality now. He just made El Camino for Netflix just off a whim, and it was. I thought it was incredible. So
you've already sold me on watching that. I mean, hell, Breaking Bad already sold me on watching that. I gotta watch that at this point. That's for sure.
I'm telling you, I will say the first season does have a little bit of a Parks and Rec syndrome because I know that a lot of people don't like the first season of Parks and Rec, but halfway through season 2, I was like, okay, let's go, and it just got better from there. So
good to know. Sweet. Well, let's move
top
into
3.
Our
We're
top
here.
3, guys. Man. I'm gonna kick it off. My top 3. Coming in at number 3 is a Apple TV Plus original called Ted Lasso, one of the many examples of why competition in the marketplace is an amazing thing. We would never have Ted Lasso without that. And I never thought I'd be praising Apple for pretty much anything. I mean, my iPhone seems to always lag. It never feels like any Apple product I buy is as strong as they say. But Ted Lasso is actually incredible. It is so charming. You watch this show not for what it was advertised for, although I think a lot of people can just get that. But being us, this community and Dom and I being people who really dive deep and get a lot out of what we watch, you kind of watch this show to watch a guy who is lost and is just trying his best to figure out life. And it's very relatable and it's very generic. And I think also it's laughable, that premise, right? It's okay, cool. You went to a writer's room for the first time and that's what you said. Good luck working ever again. Not in this case. Ted Lasso is able to sort of dig its heels into the tropiness of these types of dramedy character shows and make that its strongest suit, because Ted is unlike any character you've ever seen. I mean, you can beat Ted up over and over again with your words and bruise his feelings, but he's always going to have your back because that's just who he is. And he does these unexpected character reactions to this kind of like insanely, I mean, people talk about like there being things against sports teams, like everything's against them. Can they go all the way? Like Ted Lasso has everything against him, and he just never gives up. He's a fighter, and it's kind of like the writing is why all my shows are in this top 10 list this year. And so for them to take this seemingly very generic premise, character who are going to beat up, but he's so lovable that you're going to root for him, and eventually he's going to turn everyone onto his side. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't watch that show on paper, but I watched it and I ended up finding so much in it. And what's crazy, that's only the season 1 premise. Season 2, we have a complete 180, a shift that I've never seen coming out of a first season in this type of medium, in this sort of like sitcom-y, dramedy style medium, where now this is where they're going to get challenged. In season 2, can they capture as much charm as they had in season 1 for it to be number 3 for me, with this amazing cast that all works so well together, with this giant sort of emphasis on an American man being in England coaching soccer from a football perspective, but never having any of that step on what the show's actually about. But now everything the show's about has switched. So we shall see. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't watched it. That's why I'm kind of talking around it. We did do an episode on it. So if you want more spoilery style talk, go and check it out. But since it is relatively low key and I want the second season to thrive, go and check it out, because they are not sticking to what's comfortable. And I think that's what they didn't do in regards to the medium they were in this first season, which I think for everyone who's watched it, it's so revered. I have high hopes for this show. I really do. I think that this could be a defining sitcom/dramedy of the 2020s. We'll see what they do with it, though. The ball, no pun intended, is literally in their court right now. So Ted Lasso at number 3. Go watch it. It's got heart. It's got charm. Something in it for everyone.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much on this, only because obviously, even though I was there for the Ted Lasso episode, I don't know how much I contributed, because literally, I mean, you could point a gun to my head. I couldn't tell you a single thing about what happened in that finale. Just like the whole thing just like kind of washed over me. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It was just one of those shows I'm like, okay, Jason Sudeikis is doing a funny Southern accent, and the whole show is just, at least from what I remember, is just making fun of the American jokes. And like, yeah, it was sweet, but it wasn't for me at the end of the day. I hope that my thoughts change, though, for season 2, if it takes as drastic of a left turn as you say it will. So we'll see. My number 3 is, look, I had to say goodbye to a couple shows this year, and Clone Wars was certainly like impactful for me. But I mean, look, this show is one that I've kind of developed an odd relationship with, because it was that show that didn't necessarily leave me feeling particularly good just about myself or in general about human beings, especially considering that, I love movies and I love movie making, and it always kind of makes me a little bit depressed when I see just how fucked up Hollywood is behind the scenes. And never in a million years did I think that an animated show about talking animals interacting with humans in Hollywood would be one of the best goddamn shows of the last century. But man, this last season of BoJack Horseman, boy, holy shit. Like, after season after season after season after season after season of seeing BoJack pick himself up and then fall down again, and pick himself up and fall down again, and pick himself up and screw people over and get redeemed, and then fucking commit a horrendous act and then get redeemed. It was the individual seasons were still so good that you didn't really start to notice that nature. But I guess it just shows the brilliance when it comes to these writers and this overall show created, that they were kind of able to take their own formula and kind of inherently the formula that I think is troubling just of most kind of shows of that ilk in general, where again, like one of the biggest flaws of the show is, again, TV is inherently designed to last forever. So how do you challenge the normal conventions while still kind of maintaining the status quo? And obviously, again, that's kind of a formula that obviously modern day TV shows are kind of running with, or just completely throwing out, or just making fun of in general. And BoJack kind of does the best of all worlds, where in this last season, which technically I'm really only referring to the last 8 episodes that premiered in January, but I am also referring a little bit to the first 8 episodes that aired back in December, I believe, of 2019. And again, but the 1-2 punch of finally setting BoJack, who again has been a largely problematic character, a character that you like, but again, the show is also giving you every reason to like be like, yeah, you shouldn't like this guy. This is not a good person. But then it keeps giving us reasons to feel sorry for him. And the the first 8 episodes of the 6th season are for the first time finally putting BoJack in a position where he actually has to accept some real responsibility for his actions. And he almost makes you believe that he will until these last 8 episodes come in. And I will say that the way that this show handles the Me Too efforts and how that factors into the storyline and how it just kind of puts a perfect little bow on everything for this character and this world, it is just absolutely perfect. I don't want to spoil anything because it is so good and the writing is so brilliant how this is handled, and it is so gut-wrenching and gut-punching, but heartwarming, and just so like so many different feelings that I wouldn't expect for this type of a show, and just kind of, again, having to say goodbye to it. It was the emotional kind of goodbye that I wasn't expecting, and the finale, for it to be kind of as perfect as it is just, it's one for the ages. It truly is. BoJack Horseman was an experience unlike any others that I feel like I've had in my life, and it's a show, obviously, that I heavily recommend people to watch. Again, similar to I Know This Much Is True, it's a very deep, dark show. It's a very deep show. It's a very depressing show, but it's also funny. It's got those heartwarming moments, and it also just, can make you realize that, yeah, people are good and people are shitty, and you kind of just have to take them both as is, and it's kind of up to you as far as how you're going to pass judgment. But yeah, number 3, BoJack. It was my favorite show of the year until I saw these top 2 in like the last couple weeks. So
nice. Yeah. I mean, I stuck with that show for a while. I do have to watch this final season. I think anyone who has eyes can realize how just, how hypocritical Hollywood is. I mean, just turn on the Oscars for a second.
Yeah,
but
right.
I didn't watch this last season, so I'm kind of curious. What did you mean by the Me Too efforts? That's interesting. That wasn't in play, really.
Oh,
when
that's
I was
tricky because I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say that obviously we know that BoJack has not had the best relationship with women on the show, to say the least.
Sure.
And let's just say that they bring some of those efforts around, and it really comes back to bite him in the ass, especially with a certain extremely tragic death that took me completely by surprise in the 3rd season finale. They bring that back in the best and worst way possible. And
so BoJack has yet another dark night of the soul.
Dude, you're not.
Yeah, don't
ready.
spoil it then. Don't spoil it.
I can't say anything else because that's all
I
I'm
see
gonna
what
say.
you mean.
Dude, all I'm gonna say, the 5th season had an entire episode where he was just standing at a podium giving a monologue for 22 minutes, and it was perfect. So
sure.
Yeah.
All right. Then keep it vague. I'll have to check it out.
I have to keep it vague because, oh man,
so much to watch, so little time.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I get that. Yeah. So number 2.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of time to watch this next show, though. In fact, it's a fairly quick watch. It's a limited series.
Would you say the opposite of the last show that I just brought up?
I mean, opposite. That's I don't really know.
Well, because BoJack doesn't necessarily. BoJack kind of makes you feel bad a lot of the times, but your show, the title quite literally is.
The title quite literally is a contradiction. My second pick is Feel Good. It's a Netflix original, written, directed, and starring Mae Martin, who's a Canadian comedian who's kind of made some waves in that sort of comedy store circuit. One of the up and comers in that Joe Rogan scene, and she's really charming in this role. Man, this is about a young couple who are sort of struggling to figure out who they are. She's a Canadian living overseas because she has issues with her parents. Lisa Kudrow from Friends being her mother, who actually has like a decently sized role. And it's not just one of those, hey, we're a relatively small production, but we got this big name in. It's actually really well written, and she's kind of perfect for the part. It's pretty awesome, too, because she wasn't actually, the budget didn't put too much in her pocket. She really just enjoyed the script. So for her, it was kind of just like, I just want to be a part of this thing. And it speaks to the show because, I mean, she can choose what she wants to do quite literally. She was in one of the biggest sitcoms of all time, and she chose to put some of her time into being in this kind of small, under the radar I'd say personal project that just happened to get released through one of the major streaming services. May struggles with addiction. She struggles with being manic and having medication for something that we never quite figure out. You assume it's along the lines of like, I know this much is true style, bipolar, sort of unfortunate good person struggling with a mental illness. And she doesn't treat herself right, though, either. Again, she does cocaine. She smokes way too much weed. She drinks excessively. Doesn't help that she's a comedian and she's pretty damn good at it. So she's always in a club, always getting opportunities. So it's kind of like this double standard that she's trying to be a good person, but she needs to put money in her pocket. So everything she does contradicts itself. And that's why I love the title. If she changes, she'll have nothing. She'll have no job. She'll be out on the street. Sure, she'll be clean. Sure, she'll be a good person, but who will she have to share that with? She needs to make ends meet. It's kind of what it's about young 30-year-olds trying to make a living. And of course, her girlfriend, who is sort of struggling with her sexuality. May is very open, whereas her girlfriend is not. I forget her girlfriend's name right now, but her performance is incredible. Just go and look it up. Her girlfriend is embarrassed to be seen in public with her because of so many different reasons. And it's another one of those shows, like every single show on my list, where it could have easily have gone south. It could have easily have been corny and all that. But the thing is, there's so much of this comedian in this show. It's so personal that it almost feels like you're watching her autobiography, and it is very well done because it's not as self-indulgent as that also might sound. It really is one of I'd say it's got to be the best love story I've seen in like the past 5 years as far as television goes. And I've watched a lot of these sort of like streaming sort of dramedy shows, the more cutting edge of comedy and humor and drama, that sort of like hybrid sort of style that we've gotten with shows like Flaked. And I know this much, It's the End of the Effing World. Like this sort of like, hey, multiple genres in one. What is it? We don't quite know. It does a little bit of everything. And the streaming shows that I think kind of get lumped into just streaming shows because they didn't get put on a big network, which I always thought was silly because the future is streaming. So they're just shows. But what this show does is it enraptures you in every second of it. I've watched it 3 times this year. It's almost like a comfort food because it does have sort of a turnaround at the end that makes you feel good, but it's also rooted in reality. So nothing's going to be perfect. And it's a disaster that you can't stop watching because she just pours her damn heart and soul into this. I watched so many interviews too about this, and she really went for it, man. Like watching this show and learning about her story, she was not shy. And I'd be embarrassed to put some of those things in, but it makes it so much better because, hey, look, you make a bad choice. It's about how you pick yourself up. And the show's got a lot of those cool sentiments while still not being corny at all, just being human. It's so freaking human that it's almost cringy because it feels so non-televised at one point in time. The last part of the season specifically. So yeah, check it out. It's I'll never stop talking about how good the show is because it's a goddamn hidden gem, and I hope people watch it. Netflix, I hate you, but you gave me so many good shows this year that I'm conflicted. So
yeah,
feel good. Number 2.
I remember when you told me about this show, and it's just from everything you say, it sounds like my kind of a show, so I'm definitely going to hit it at some point. My number 2, before we get into honorable mentions in my number 1, again, so these top 2 shows, obviously, it's just kind of for lack of a better thing, I'm obviously not going to be able to hit every great show in the moment, and this was a show that I watched the first episode of at the beginning of the year, and I said, I like it, but it's kind of boring. I want to get to it, but then I kind of never did until the last 2 weeks. And I watched the other 7 episodes of it, and I'm like, holy motherfucking shit. Because, look, Alex Garland was already a guy who I loved because of the 2 movies that he contributed to us these last couple of years, Ex Machina and Annihilation. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit saddened when I heard that he was doing a mini-series next. And I'm like, okay, is he going to be able to pull off kind of the level of incredible intellectual sci-fi that he has with his last 2 movies? And he did, arguably, possibly even better than his first 2 movies, which I didn't know that was going to be possible. And he kicked ass because my number 2 is Devs. What the hell? Like, first, like, artificial intelligence and just kind of the presentation of that as like an alternative form of reality obviously has been something that has kind of been parodied to death, and because obviously with the Matrix obviously first bringing that into kind of consideration back in 99. But Garland takes all of the tricks and tropes associated with that genre and once again kind of focuses it in with his own little niche, in his own little world, with the typical characters that we see in every single property, and just truly gets into the root of once again showing how we are at our most human when we are trying to advance to the level of gods, quite literally. And we saw it in Ex Machina, we saw it in Annihilation, and we're seeing it now with this, with the story, following the story of a young programmer whose boyfriend is accepted into the prestigious section of the tech company that they work at, known specifically as devs. He is unfortunately murdered after he is revealed to be a Russian spy who was trying to smuggle information out, but her subsequent investigation into his murder and what's going on secretly at devs and the secrecy of its owner, portrayed brilliantly by Nick Offerman, is just one for the ages. Absolutely. This show has an incredible cast. Every single time you think that like it can't possibly one up itself, it does. The revelations that it makes and kind of the introspection that it takes on human beings, on computers, on simulation, on Silicon Valley too, the statements that it makes on that, the visual style in this show is like everything else Garland-esque, is to another level. The score, oh my god, you're a score guy, so like I'll just gush about that for a second, because like he plays around with like incorporating sci-fi noises, like noises that you would like think are like part of a computer as part of the score. And like it's very Blade Runner-esque in that sense, literally to the point where they've even got like a giant statue of like a little girl as part of it.
You could say the score is alive, you know?
Literally. The score is quite literally alive and a beast in and of itself. It's just like, there were just points where my pulse is pounding and I couldn't breathe. Like just a simple conversation between two people and explaining kind of what it is, this machine that it is that they've created, and everything that kind of goes into it. Like, it just takes so many things that I typically associate with comic books and brings them into reality in the best ways possible. And at the risk of spoiling anything, again, it is an absolutely incredible show. It goes so deep with its themes. It does not hold back. It, to me, was the equivalent of watching an incredible science fiction movie that, for the most part, I feel like we missed out on largely with Tenet. It's my number 2 of the year. And again, I guess that shows how powerful my number 1 is. It's Devs. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, before we jump into the honorable mentions, I do just want to say that I'm 4 episodes in, but the thing is, I thought to myself, okay, I could binge this and have it be considered for my top 10 list, or I could enjoy it and appreciate it, knowing that we're going to talk about this show for years to come, most likely, because I'm loving it so much so far that I felt it'd be disrespectful to the show to just rush through it and sort of force my way through something that has been this awesome. Like every aspect of this thing so far lives and breathes, like the score, the sound effects, like every character has a purpose so far. I'm loving it. And so, yeah, I'm going to get there, guys, and I'll obviously talk about that more in the future, but awesome choice, Dom. So
yeah,
honorable mentions,
I'm just saying right now that you're making the right choice. And honestly, I'm so glad that like you're taking your time and that you didn't rush.
It was tough, man. I wanted to,
put it on this list. No, I get it, but like, trust me, you're making the right choice, because like literally, I'm like, because here's the thing, I binged episodes 2 through 4, and I really regret it, because once I got to episode 5, I just had to like stop, and I'm like, okay, stop. Actually sit there, pay attention, take this in, and it was just such an incredible experience. Then when I got to episode 7, and I was holding my breath, and I wanted to go into episode 8, but I'm like, wait, let it savor a bit, let it simmer. It's going to be well worth it when you get to and that last episode, I'm like, yeah, this is incredible. Like, just, oh man. Exactly. Oh, Alex Garland, and his next movie is going to star Jesse Buckley, which I'm like, bro, just... yeah, all right. So honorable mention time. So I only had a couple of honorable mentions here. I also did want to like sneak in a couple of kind of fast talks like I did. Last year I kind of just like briefly just did a once over every show that I did, because there was just a lot of TV that I watched last year, and not as much this year, obviously, but quick shout out to obviously the 3rd and potentially final season of On My Block, again, kind of my little Netflix cult show that I still think doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Umbrella Academy season 2, I thought was a big step up over the first season and really started to get me invested in that show and those characters. Fargo season 4, again, I don't think that this show was ever going to quite get to the heights that it was with those first 2 seasons, but it still was very refreshing after a very disappointing 3rd season. I thought it had some incredible casting, some interesting stories, and I thought it got back to kind of the root of what made Fargo. Haunting of Bly Manor, again, I largely talked about that already. Just really, really surprised me as far as what like an interesting kind of gothic story it could tell. And once again, continuing the power of Mike Flanagan. His Dark Materials is a show that I have definitely not gotten a chance to talk about enough of on the show, but that's a show that is famously an adaptation of the book series that was adapted into the Golden Compass movie back in 2007. And this season was the second season following the debut season last year that is based off of the second book of the series, The Subtle Knife. And as far as just being an incredible adaptation of everything that the book offered and everything that the book's themes went for, it was just completely awesome. And that was another one that had a really, really heartbreaking finale. And the last one is just, again, the things that I gushed about kind of throughout this episode. Transformers, War for Cybertron trilogy, parts 1 and 2, Siege and Earthrise. They both came out in 2020 and they were both absolutely impeccable. And I highly recommend you to watch them, even if you're not a Transformers fan. Those are really the only honorable mentions that I have. But I did have one other prize that I wanted to award after. But I'll let you do your honorable mentions first.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, I really only have one, and that's HBO's Run. No, I'm just kidding. Run away from that show.
Yeah, right.
If you can help it. That
Couldn't
show's
even make
terrible.
it 3 episodes into that show. And
No,
it was
that
only
show
7
is-
episodes that got canceled. I'm like, wow.
Not a good year for HBO. Now that it's all said and done.
Not really. Not really. I mean, they had their hits, but yeah.
Yeah, but few and far between. Anyways, I have 3. I have first Transformers: War for Cybertron. Loving it so far. Cannot wait to watch the second installment, and I know that the third is going to be a banger.
Dude,
It's just been so good. I mean, like I said, Transformers are a part of my childhood. The movies got away from me a little bit just because of the fact that I wasn't at the right age and they weren't doing things that appealed to
Trust
me.
me, you
but
weren't missing anything there.
I've always been about Transformers on the small screen. I'll always check out Transformers on the small screen, and they're doing it right, man. They're fixing a lot of mistakes from what I hear from those movie guys. Dave, Lil Dicky's new series. It was not ever going to be in consideration for my top 10 because I think as a writer in regards to television, being a musician and writing songs is very different. He clearly has a lot to learn. But to be honest with you, he has decent grasp on writing the comedy to begin with. Like, it shows that all those commercials that he does, he's not just an actor. There's more to his talent. And I respect, as someone who does enjoy Lil Dicky from time to time, it's, again, do I take him seriously? Do I not? I just like it sometimes. It's good. He has a nice flow. And I think that his writing was definitely him. Very, kind of like bro-y humor, which isn't always my thing, but it felt true to who he was, so that's why I got to give it some credit. The show has a lot to learn. I think a lot of the young actors were given an amazing opportunity. I want to see them grow. I think they can grow. Now the question is, will this show be more than just, the rapper made a show and it's going to be here today, gone tomorrow? They have a shot. I hope they do it. I at least felt that they get the nod for the honorable mention because, again, it felt very true to who he was. It didn't feel contrived, and I respect that. And then, of course, my last pick is going to be a show that I actually had to watch a second time because I famously loved the first season, paid homage to some of my favorite science fiction films of yesteryear, like Blade Runner specifically. The show takes a lot from. Altered Carbon in season 2 was a bit of a wild ride. I actually had to rewatch it, and I kind of realized that, and it's the fault of the generation we live in. Some shows are just so heavy, so wordy, that you can't even have your phone sort of flash and a text message takes your eye away for a minute or two, because then you miss so much of the show don't tell, the mise en scène that this show is really all about, the atmospheric nature of the storytelling, the slow sci-fi of yesteryear, not flashy, not explosions, just the narrative playing out is the grip. And I was a little upset that I couldn't do that the first time around, but I knew there was something there. The cast is too awesome. The show is so freaking well made. And I'm glad I gave it a second chance. Once I did that second chance, it wasn't worthy of being in the top 10, but I actually thought the second season comes out stronger than the first season did. This is one of those slow burns. If you like slow burns, if you can be patient for them, this is for you, especially if you like that Blade Runner sort of sci-fi, neon-drenched, raining all the time, dystopian future. Yes, but it is hard to get through if you are very goldfish-minded, like I certainly was my first time watching the second season. So yeah, check it out. Not for everyone, but it's well made at the end of the day. You cannot take that away from it. So Yeah, I only had 3. Simple, quick.
Yeah.
Didn't watch the most TV this year, but
again, it's just there wasn't that much to watch as far as that goes. I remember it's so funny because I remember we were on a hike and you were telling me like, yeah, there was a lot of good shows. The first half of the year, that was reading them off, and you were like, yeah, okay, maybe there weren't as many as I thought. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem like it. Like I said, the back half of this year really came to play as far as that goes. They kind of definitely were overcompensating. So I just want to give a shout out to a couple of the shows. Obviously, Ted Lasso, a show that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but certainly got a much bigger following than I would have thought. Hollywood, which was Ryan Murphy's show, as part of his first 8-picture deal on Netflix. I was like, okay, it was fine. It was fun. Dave was a lot of fun. Wasn't anything great. Again, I'm forever now. I'm like, okay, any rapper that makes a show for FX, I'm never going to be able to think of anything but Atlanta, because Atlanta's a fucking phenomenon in of itself. But that show had a few funny moments. Ozark season 3, famously the show that everyone loved that I hated. And then so now I wanted to bring up a specific award that I wanted to kind of make kind of a staple of our top 10 TV shows podcast going forward, which is the Torpedo Award. And the very specific criteria for this award is the show that probably had the most potential going in and just completely flubbed it. If I had to retroactively crown a winner for this award from last year, it would easily be the last season of Game of Thrones, although the 3rd season of Stranger Things comes pretty close to me. And there were 2 giant contenders for this award, that being Westworld season 3, which, again, everyone forgot came out this year, and all for the better, because yikes, I hate that I even had to bring up that show came out this year. And obviously the debut of Space Force, which, again, everyone was happy. It's like, yes, the Office 2.0, and that show just was not anything. But the winner...
And I feel like you could throw Lovecraft Country in there, too.
Well, you just answered it, because Lovecraft Country is the winner of the Torpedo Award for the Talking TV shows of 2020 year, because this was a show that, for me, that had everything going for it, and just tanked it. One episode, cool, and then just as time went on, it just showed, we're not interested in an actual story. We're just interested in being a message of the week type thing, but just with the most obnoxious, dumb things possible that we can do that kind of completely serve to undercut the message that we're going for, which is, of course, really annoying and really stupid, with obnoxious characters that make dumb decisions that I hate. And this is a show that should have been awesome, and it completely shit the bed as far as that goes. Swing and a miss. So the winner of the Torpedo Award for the Talking TV for 2020 is Lovecraft.
For you, my Torpedo Award.
What's your Torpedo Award?
Yeah, you don't get to make that decision. Aww. My Torpedo Award is going to be Space Force, because I love The Office. Not more than life, but The Office gives me life. So there's a bit of a dialogue I need to have within myself there to figure out which one I really love more. And it's a huge part of my existence, because that show is such comfort food. Everyone has that show, and that's my show. And so the show had everything going for it going into it. And if we're talking about torpedoing, this show did just that. It was a failed space launch. It was everything wrong with the past, 4 years, it compressed in a bottle, just rage that was misguided, actual decisions made by important people that was just, I don't want to talk about it. But this show was just the worst political statement you could ever make, because it just why? We didn't need it. And now I'm even nervous, because they're doing a reunion episode on Peacock of The Office, which has been in the works for such a long time. But can I trust Greg Daniels and Steve Carell anymore? I don't really know if I can right now, at least in the TV format, because of how bad this was, at least as a creative team. Because to not even garner one episode that had me laughing with just the talent, the stacked cast. No, you guys don't get to get off the hook from that one too easily. I'm only watching season 2 so we can shred it apart on the show, because I know it's going to be bad.
I'm not even looking. I'm not going to lie. I'm not even looking forward to watching season 2 for the podcast. Because
now I'm not letting it off the hook.
Yeah,
that's just what I'm going to do.
I've never been the biggest fan of The Office. I made that opinion more than clear in 2020, that I've officially, The Office is a show that I've come to rest on my laurels that I just don't like. And I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. There are great shows out there that people love that I just don't like. I'm okay with that. I'll die on that hill. But for this show to come out and not even be watchable, I'm like, oh my God, how do you get worse than The Office? And this show somehow did that. So I still hated it more than Lovecraft Country, because I guess the difference being that Lovecraft Country was a show that I actually was really excited for and thought could have a lot of cool potential going in, being hinted at, the big team up collaboration between Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams, and then it just was what it was. And Space Force, I kind of just had no expectations for, so that's why it's kind of another shitty comedy. All right. So now we're doing it, Chris. Number 1, our best TV shows of the year. So, Chris,
hell yeah.
What is your number 1 favorite TV show of 2020?
Yeah, my number 1 favorite TV show of 2020 is The Queen's Gambit. God damn, did I not think I'd Did I ever think I'd like a show about chess this much? I mean, it's insane to me. The show is just, you know what it is? It's the way that it rides highs like your favorite sports films and has intensity like your favorite action sequences. Then you realize, wait a minute. They're just sitting around a table punching a clock, playing timed chess, professional chess. But the fact that you don't think that until you binge the show in a day because it's that good, and then you start out, it's light out, you end, it's dark out, and you're like, I'm not even mad that all my time just went just down the drain to a show about chess. And I think it actually kind of serves a greater purpose where, again, something I think Hollywood got away from quite a bit, especially I recently rewatched a few old sci-fi classics this weekend. Invasion of the Body Snatchers being one, the original 50s film, and there's nothing really flashy in that movie. They couldn't really do what they were able to do in modern day sci-fi. So they rely on amazing writing to grip you in and to just make it feel like an hour and 40-minute film went by in 10 minutes. And the show did just that. It's a period piece, and it kind of harkens back to the strength of the writing from that period, from that era. And 2020 is weird because I didn't watch a lot of TV, and I actually thought that a lot of the TV I watched was subpar, but my top 10 list has this one thing in common that I'm just begging for everyone to wake up from, which is this Marvel inundation of, Snyder cuts and DC films where it's the same thing over and over and over and over again. We just keep buying it because it's got a new cloak over it or a new cape. Wake up, guys. The story needs to be sound before anything else is going to be worthwhile. And this year in TV, kind of made me feel like, maybe film school, kind of is working out. Maybe there's a new generation of people who are trying to bring back some of the old, techniques and old sort of gripping characteristics that make stories stand on themselves, the strength of the screenplay. So kind of hopeful in regards to coming out of 2020, having not the greatest year in history, but I think one of the strongest years in narrative history on television in quite some time. And Queen's Gambit is the number one at that. We spoke ad nauseum about the cast, Anya Taylor-Joy especially, ad nauseum about the period piece just being amazing, and the set design being so perfect and just meticulously, just every aspect of this, the charm and just the attention to detail. So I don't need to talk about that right now. I want to talk about more of what I've got now that I've sat with it for a while. And what I've sat with this list for that matter is let's not settle. There are good stories out there. Tell them in a way that doesn't rely on glitz and glamour, because I don't think really anything in my list, sure we have The Boys, sure we have The Mandalorian, but I think they're stronger seasons because the storytelling was stronger than the first seasons. So let's get back to that, because I really enjoyed my time with the TV shows I watched this year, and Queen's Gambit was number one because, hey, narratives matter, and let's not settle.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that 2020 had going for it, which again, for as many things as the year had against it, was that kind of the lack of overall superhero content because of the pandemic allowed for these types of stories that typically always get overshadowed to finally gain leverage on. And basically, to echo every point that you just brought up, the idea that even in kind of this Marvel and superhero inundated world where all the stories start to feel repetitive and monogamous, and even though things could be a million miles spaced apart, they still feel like you're watching the exact same thing that you just watched. And I really, really just love that. And again, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, but kind of the breaking down between the mediums. And I really love for the different types of stories that's providing for. And I really, really think that 2020 was probably the best when it came to demonstrating that. I think that the 2017 through 19, it really got kicked off with 2016, and the 2017 to 19 run kind of removing all those barriers. Then 2020 was when they just let it loose. And again, just to give a quick shout out to all the other things on my list: Devs, Better Call Saul, Mandalorian and The Boys, The Queen's Gambit, I Know This Much Is True, BoJack and Clone Wars, even though those were wrapping up shows that had already been going on. Just every one of those shows, and as well all the shows that you brought up on your list as well, were able to kind of tap into that void as far as really diving into, like you said, take away the glitz, take away the special effects, take away the superheroes punching each other and the fun action. What is it that we watch this shit for? We watch it for good stories, and we watch it for incredibly well-rounded and interesting characters. And as crazy as it is that all of that is in every single entry on my list, I don't think any property, forget movies, anything, no property was more demonstrative of that than my number one choice, which is I May Destroy You, which is a little known show that was, again, another co-BBC and HBO production that was produced, created, written, executive produced, directed mostly entirely by Michaela Cole, who is an up-and-coming actress who starred in 2 Black Mirror episodes. I believe that was the only thing that I saw her in. And she goes and writes this entire 12-episode, I don't even know if it's a mini-series or a series. They kind of left that wide open as far as if they get renewed, all about her personal experience of having to deal with the after effects of a sexual assault. And for a show to kind of take a subject matter that is that dark and for frankly like that uncomfortable to deal with as far as the realities of that show, and this is already after I saw a movie that I'll get to when we cover top best movies of the year, that I thought it kind of already dealt with that in like the best way possible, in a way that I didn't see coming and that didn't think was possible, as far as just covering that perspective, which is a perspective that I think has largely been either ignored or portrayed in horrifically what's it called, exploitative, or just frankly kind of untrue, unflattering ways that I don't think seek to kind of make the issues as present as they are. But for this show to do all of that and to do it well and to do it compellingly, like this show brought in so many different aspects of kind of domestic assault and where that comes from, and it just made me think about it in a way that kind of myself, as for lack of a better word, a white male, just I don't think really could kind of understand before and kind of comprehend. And for this show to do that and still be as entertaining and still be as engaging as it was, and still show that, like, yeah, even though this main character, whose name is Arabella, has undergone a horrific experience, and the fact that, and the rest, and you're following her throughout these 12 episodes and all the different ways that she has to go through that and has to still experience a real life, and how it affects her relationship with those closest to her, and how she flashes back to things she did before, and it sends her down this road of questioning that, like, all of this, and for this show to still be a comedy and still be as entertaining and as engrossing and as engaging as it is, and for the acting to be as incredible as it is, and for the writing to be as incredible, this show is a freaking phenomenon. And I don't think that enough people are covering it, and it damn well better be nominated for all the awards at the Emmys, because this show truly is like one of the, forget movies, forget TV, this is the best thing that I think I've seen so far from 2020. And it is just, it's unbelievable. Like, I don't think I can, like, properly cover all of the kind of minor intricacies that this show gets into in, like, the however many minutes we have left. But yeah, it's number one. To me, it's the best thing that I've seen so far all year. It's I May Destroy You. I heavily recommend this for anyone who has not heard of or watched this yet.
Yeah, I mean, look, hopefully we bring it up again when the second season comes around, and I plan on watching it myself.
Hopefully, if the second season does come out.
Yeah, we'll see. Time will tell, right?
Time will
dude,
tell.
we did it. 2020,
so yeah,
wrap.
Yeah, 2020. So let's do that little list combo that we've been doing now. So after going through our list, we have 4 entries in common. So I have Queen's Gambit, Clone Wars, The Boys, and The Mandalorian. So I assume that all 4 of those make that list. So
I'd say that's pretty easy.
Yeah, definitely. So as far as my list goes, so I May Destroy You. Do you want to put it on there?
Let's move further down to things that maybe I've seen first that I haven't seen this season of. Like, I definitely think BoJack should be on there.
You think BoJack should be on there?
Because of what the show stood for as a whole throughout the entirety of its run, even though I haven't seen the final season. So I definitely want, personally, I want BoJack in there.
Got it.
Just because.
As far as your shows go, I definitely want to put Feel Good on there. Like, I was hovering between 2 other shows, but I definitely think that the pitch that you gave, Feel Good, like really shows is like, yeah, this is a show that everybody needs to be watching that nobody knows about. So I'll put
I'm cool with that. Yeah, now that we got that out of the way, just wanted to leave a room for then. Yes, I want to toss I May Destroy You in there as well. Devs, because I've seen 4 episodes, so I can speak to that to an extent, and I know I'm already loving it. Some things you can't rush. You got to enjoy at your own pace. Exactly. So definitely toss Devs in there. And that should leave.
So we have 2 more spots.
That's what I thought. So I mean, personally, I think as much as I want to maybe toss in Kim's Convenience, or as much as I want to toss in, Afterlife, I think Ted Lasso.
I was agreeing. Just because of the impact that it had, it has to go on there. So Ted Lasso's on there. And then one more spot. So here's the thing about Better Call Saul. I think that we should reserve Better Call Saul. I mean, if you want to, don't get me wrong, I would be more than ecstatic if you put Better Call Saul on there. But only because, like, I think that just the impact, again, just kind of, if we're taking the Breaking Bad into it, like, I think that last season when it comes out, whenever it comes out, is going to be absolutely gangbusters. Although this 5th season, because here's the thing, even though I love this season and it's one of the best seasons overall, I still think that the third season is the best season. So that's what I'm saying about Better Call Saul.
So I obviously love Breaking Bad. That's an amazing show.
Right.
I have not seen Better Call Saul
Right,
yet. It's
that's
just a
the
lot
thing.
to get through. So like I'm gonna leave this up to you because this is essentially like coming from your list. But like I did watch I Know This Much Is True and it was shot in our area. Does that change your mind over Better Call Saul? I'll go with you here,
the only reason why is because I feel like for that, because here's the thing, the reason why I would have Better Call Saul over I Know This Much Is True is because it wasn't in your list. If it was in your list and it was a shared entry, it would be on the list automatically by default.
Okay.
But because it's not on the list and because I have Better Call Saul ranked much higher, that's why if I had to pick and choose between those two, I would go with Better Call Saul.
Makes sense. Better Call Saul it is.
All right, so Better Call Saul it is. All right, so we'll read them off and then we'll figure out the ranking. So our 10 entries are that we have the final season of BoJack Horseman, I May Destroy You, Devs, The Queen's Gambit, Better Call Saul, Season 5, The Clone Wars final season, The Boys Season 2, The Mandalorian Season 2, Feel Good, and Ted Lasso.
I mean, to me, Mandalorian and Boys are number 10 and 9, whatever way we choose to slice them. I mean, they're obviously good, but I feel like the other shows just go so much deeper.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
So here's the thing, because last year I liked the first season of The Boys over the first season of The Mandalorian, and obviously I think you share with that sentiment. This season for me it was the opposite. I like the sophomore season of Mandalorian much more so than the sophomore season of The Boys. So I'd say Mandalorian at 9 and The Boys at 10.
It's fine with me.
All right, cool. So that's that. So then at 8.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For some reason, BoJack stands out.
All right.
But what else do we have? I don't got it in front of me, so I'm just kind of going.
I May Destroy You, Devs, Queen's Gambit, Better Call Saul, Clone Wars, Feel Good, and Ted Lasso.
Maybe Clone Wars.
I personally think that 8 is a little bit too low for BoJack. Clone Wars, here's the thing that we're basing this off of, right? Because I think that all those other shows are better, but Clone Wars versus kind of Feel Good and Ted Lasso, and really just all the other shows. Clone Wars is, again, as much as we gushed about it those last 4 episodes, do those first 8 kind of put it down a couple pegs, and that's why we put it at 8?
I agree. I think that's why. I do think that's why. That's what I was going to say, so I'm with you there.
Clone Wars at 8. Mm-hmm. We'll save BoJack for a later entry, so
sure.
What do you say? We want to put Saul at 7 only because you haven't seen it? And I know that obviously you have like a much more higher preference towards the shows that you have seen.
That's fair. If you're cool with that, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Like I said, I loved it. I loved it absolutely, but I'll be fine with it there.
All right, that's fine with me. I mean, Bly Manor next then.
Bly Manor's not on there.
Oh right, you're sorry. We both watched it, but you didn't put it on yours.
Yep.
So read off to me again.
So last we still have left BoJack, Ted Lasso, Feel Good, Queen's Gambit, Devs, and I May Destroy You. I'm fine with Queen's Gambit at 1, just so you know. Even though I May Destroy You was my favorite. Yeah, okay. So Queen's Gambit should be at 1.
Queen's Gambit should be at 1. I think that I'd want to put Feel Good over Ted Lasso.
Okay. So
I'd be okay with Ted Lasso coming up next.
Okay, at 6 or 5?
6 is the next spot, right?
6. So yeah, Ted Lasso at 6.
And then I feel like maybe we go BoJack.
BoJack at 5. Yeah,
does that make sense to you?
Yep, that makes sense.
Sounds logical, right?
Yep, it's a last season versus a first season, and I'm always willing to give the hesitancy to the first season, even if I haven't seasoned. So that seeing as that puts BoJack at 5 and Feel Good at 4.
Feel Good at 4. So then what's our top 3?
I May Destroy You and Queen's Gambit is our top 3. Are you cool with that order, or would you want to switch something around?
Yeah, that's fine. Because I mean, I don't know where Devs is going to quite go yet. So, I mean, it's been hard to avoid the spoilers, but I somehow have. So
hey, props to you, dude. Because
Queen's Gambit, stealing the
Queen's
fucking
Gambit,
show.
stealing it.
Look
So.
at that.
This is it, people. Drum roll. This is the official combined top talking TV top 10 TV shows of 2020. Number 10, The Boys, Season 2. Number 9, The Mandalorian, Season 2. Number 8, The Clone Wars, the final season. Number 7, Better Call Saul, Season 5. Number 6, Ted Lasso. Number 5, BoJack Horseman, the final season. Number 4, Feel Good. Number 3, Devs. Number 2, I May Destroy You. And number 1, The Queen's Gambit. And hell yeah. Dude, that's, oh my God. Jesus Christ. I'm honestly kind of glad that we got this out of the way first. Because, honestly, this is going to make ranking movies next week fucking easy by comparison, because especially because like when we talk about the movies next week, it's gonna be like, wow, even the best ones of these don't even come close to our TV, just as far as how in depth those stories go. Like those are some bangers right there.
For sure.
Those are some
TVs. The TV top 10s have been good to us so far.
Yeah, they have.
So speaking of next week and things on the horizon, I figure you probably know about some stuff we have coming up on our show, right?
Bit. Look, I might have a video dropping or two on Wednesday in order to kind of tide you guys over a little bit for while we're building towards our top 10 best movies of 2020 next Monday. But this Friday, of course, we're continuing with our WandaVision recap show, which we started last week, and we will be continuing for the next subsequent 7 Fridays until the show reaches its explosive conclusion. Hopefully, we shall see. And like I said, we've got content that comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. We've got, I'll just spoil it right here, I'm doing my top 10 worst of 2020. I wasn't going to do one this year, but with just how absolutely awful the worst of the worst that I saw this year was, I'm like, okay, this is too good of an opportunity. There are some bad movies that I saw this year that I really want to roast. So that video will be going up. It will be pre-recorded. That will not be a live stream because I'm not going to torture Chris with some of the awful movies that I've seen so far this year. That'll be up on Wednesday. WandaVision recap for episode 3 will be up on Friday, and then this coming Monday, the final Monday of January, it'll be it. We're officially saying goodbye to 2020 with that episode with our top 10 favorite movies of 2020. And the following Wednesday, after that, oh man, Chris is finally going to get to reveal to the YouTube world exactly what he thinks about Christopher Nolan's masterpiece that came out this past year. Will this be the movie that finally brings Nolan back to Earth? Probably not, but we'll see overall. So people, once again, thank you for tuning in to yet another incredible episode of Talking TV. We had a lot of fun. Again, just like being able to give you guys all this content, and watching TV was a part of that. And again, Chris made the very smart call when he chose to make this Talking TV instead of Talking Movies, because it just sounds better. And what do you know? This was the year that, in my opinion, TV officially surpassed movies.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds to me like...
Oh, no, we lost Chris. Oh, no. Oh, God. All right, so I guess I'm going to have to end this on my own, only because it's too soon for us to... oh shit, made it back.
Would you look at that?
Sometimes oh my God, I thought I lost you. I thought I lost you.
Oh no.
I thought I was going to have to close this out on my own.
No, yeah. Well, I was just going to say, great year for TV.
Yeah.
We'll find out how it was for movies. Clearly it wasn't that good, as Dom alluded to. Guys, you know the deal. We appreciate you hanging out with us. It's been an honor this past year getting to grow with you guys. We just hit another subscriber tonight. The channel continues to go up. It truly means the world to us. 12 seasons in a short film.
12 seasons in a motherfucking short film, people. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Talking TV Podcast, no G. And as always, watch more, leave a subscribe, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.